Okay, so the last couple of videos I've been posting have been about clipping down my plants and chopping them up for propagation. So let's talk about propagation, because I'm going to show you my most foolproof way to propagate plants using this. I really like the idea of propagation because it means that you never really have to lose a plant as long as you're vigilant and making sure that you propagate it in time. The ability to keep plants going even after the mother root system has not had the best time is just so cool to me. And now that people are finding ways to kind of like create these Frankenstein's monster hybrids that are just tissue cultures from multiple plants put into one, like that's just so cool to me. And that's why I really wanted to talk about it with you today. Not because I'm going to be Frankenstein monstering anything, but because I'm going to be trying different plants for different goals of propagation. So what types of propagation are there? Typically there's three. There's air, which is just laying the leaf on a piece of soil without digging in. That's usually just succulents. Next is soil propagation, and that's just where you make an indentation in soil, stick the stem in, and hope for the best. Soil propagation is really useful because it bypasses transplant shock that well, we'll get into that in a second, but it's harder to monitor and harder to keep going. It's usually for more seasoned gardeners. The easiest way to propagate is through water. Water propagation is just like you saw in my test tube video where we're testing different light sources. It's a tube with water, put the plant in, and you wait for the roots to grow, typically about 2 to 6 weeks. However, water propagation is not a set it and forget it situation. Yes, it's much easier to do and usually means that you'll be able to do it more successfully than soil, but it requires a couple steps and monitoring. The reason it is not set it and forget it is because of oxygen. Water, especially standing water, gets depleted of oxygen, and oxygen is necessary for root growth. So one of the things that so many people end up failing with propagation is not changing out the water every couple of weeks. And the easiest way to tell if you are long past due, let's see, is if you start to see this build up. You start to see this sort of like rim around, that is a sign that algae has begun to grow or hard water sediment, and your plant isn't getting the loving that it needs. So it's time to change out the water. And let's talk about water really quickly. Please don't use your tap water. Please don't use your tap water. Tap water is so bad for plants, especially plants that are clippings, aka that have exposed tissue. Don't want to introduce that kind of hard lime scale or chlorine and fluoride and all that. You don't want to introduce that if you can avoid it. So best bet is to use either distilled water, or my preference is rainwater and aquarium water. However, that water needs to be switched out too, just like you would be doing if it was just distilled water and you were worried about oxygen loss. Now, water propagation is really easy. However, you get what's known as transplant shock really easily when you move the rooted plant that was formerly a cutting from water into soil, because it's a different medium. It was acquiring its nutrients a different way, and so it's a difficult transition sometimes if you're not giving it enough time to develop strong root system. You usually want roots that are about 1 to 3 inches long. So those are long. You don't want, just a couple little hair roots. That's not enough. You want long, sort of scary looking in a test tube levels of roots. So what can you propagate? Well, pure leaves like this typically won't work, but we'll give it a shot anyways and we'll see what happens. What you need instead are nodes, and these are the little nubby parts on plants. This is from a Chinese evergreen, so it kind of looks like a bamboo stalk, but I think this gives a really good impression of what nodes are. You see like the kind of sections on that. These are nodes, but on another type plant, it's also the evergreen. Let's see, yes. You don't look for like nubby things. These are nodes, that's where a new sprout will come out. And so those are your best bets. You usually want to get about 2 to 3 nodes, but as you saw in I lost variegation on my Monstera. This is kind of the best that I could do. So it's a little short and stubby, but we'll give it a shot nonetheless. Now, for propagation, all you really need is a tube or something clear. I like these like shot glasses. Shot glasses work really well. Clean water, and that's it. You can use rooting hormone if you want. I'm not a huge fan of it, mostly because I forget to use it. And I don't know, I've never really seen a huge benefit in rooting hormone versus non. So I just kind of skip that part. So now we've talked about all of the basics of why propagation, how to do it, and the different ways to do it. Now let's build a propagation box. And what these are is essentially boxes that you use for multiple propagations at the same time. Normally I would just use my test tubes like this, and these I made from resin with glass test tubes, obviously. But these have worked really well for single stems, single cuttings. If you're someone that wants to deal with nodes or longer or multiple, then you're gonna wanna make a propagation box. What I'm going to be using for this is just this Sterilite container, sterilized with isopropyl alcohol. And some people like to use leca, which are just like clay balls, and they're really good for water propagation. Some people like something called pon, which is like a mix of rocks and nutrients put in together. Some people use lava stones because they're really porous, and so they can get all those kind of nutrients and nooks and crannies into the cuttings. And then some people like pumice. I don't really have anything like that lying around, and time was of the essence, so I do have perlite. So we're gonna be making a perlite prop box. Now, FYI, I learned this in my research. If you decide to do this, you're gonna have to change the water out, right? But don't ever put it down the drain, because the perlite can expand in your pipes and make it really bad for your plumbing system. I didn't learn that the hard way, thankfully. I saw someone else had that tip, and thank you, world, for someone else dealing with that, so I didn't have to. So again, this was sterilized, cleaned out with isopropyl alcohol. I'm not sure how much I really want to put in there. I'm gonna go about halfway. So now it's time to add the water. And for this, I'm going to be using aquarium water. You can use distilled rainwater, not tap, remember. Water that you use is super important, so don't skimp on making sure you have good water. Okay, so just pouring water. And by the way, if you can find a container that has a clear lid, use that one. I don't have that, so I'm gonna be using cellophane on top. The goal is to put enough water in that you soak it, but not so much that you have a layer of water under it, because that would be too much. All right, so you can see like it's kind of pasty, like I don't know, kid's glue. I think that should be plenty. I'm gonna let it soak a little bit for a couple minutes and then we'll come back. Okay, it's been about 15 minutes and it's been soaking. So we're in like a mud, I guess, kind of phase. Now it's time to put everything in. What I'm gonna do first is actually move over a little bit so you can see me do it that way. And I'm not sure if I want to put the nodes like that or in like that, so I'm gonna do one of each, see what happens. These are, again, my Chinese evergreens, so we'll see how that goes. And now we have my Monstera variegation. See if we can try and get variegation back into this guy. I want to make sure that it don't get the leaf in, because then that would, trying to just keep it away from the nodes so that they can get as much light as they need. This is another variegation. Let's see if we can revive it. This is my Chinese evergreen, what's left over of the canopy. Put that guy in. And then a whole bunch of Tradescantia blushing brides. And they can just kind of go wherever. And I'm gonna, this one has a little bit of a leaf. Pull that off so that I can have some more room. problem with Tradescantias is that they become so interwoven, I guess. It's really hard to get them separate. Like, where does this one end? I guess right here. Now, originally my plan was to cover this with cellophane to keep some humidity in there, but I'm not sure if it's going to work because of all the leaves I have. So, I'll try it without it and hope for the best. Ideally though, you would want to trap the humidity in as much as you can. But as we are at Perfectly Imperfect Plant Care, we do the best with what we got. There's another one, we're like, I'm not sure where it ends. Okay, everybody in the pool? Good. Let's see if I can kind of turn these a little bit because I really don't want the leaves to be in the sediment if I can avoid it. All right, now I'm going to put these under my light and we will set this aside and check back in about a week or two and see how it goes.